Hi and welcome Beyond the Racing Line, the Formula 1 podcast by fans, for fans. Japan has been ran, and it's been won back to the good old days of Max winning everything and winning it by distance. But I'm not entirely sure it was as simple as it came out to be. We are going to discuss all those wonderful things about Formula 1 on the weekend, as we usually will, but we've got all the other great things like the dud of the day, 3, 2 and 1, thanks to All Signs, Fantasy, F1.5 discussion. I don't believe it's here yet, but good discussion to be had. It's all about to happen. But before we get into any of those goodies, we have got an opening question, and the opening question comes from our opening question giver. We've now got an official giver. Until the mantle is stolen off him, it's Kingsley. So well done, Kingsley. Officially our opening question giver. And his question comes around lemons.
The fruit.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
Have you said hello?
No, I haven't.
G'day.
Hi.
Tristan here with me, folks. My name is Roger. Some people pick on me for never saying my own name. I only ever introduce you and then I'm just the guy behind the mic.
Yeah.
Which is probably okay. But yeah, so it's around lemons. So what he's getting at is, with Williams not having a spare chassis and other F1 teams saying they will swap chassis for drivers.
Yep.
Ricardo is getting a new chassis. He wants to know whether F1 teams, if it's possible for F1 teams to have lemons of cars. And it's a funny one. And it's an interesting question and almost an episode in itself. Because you do hear of drivers not being happy. Remember the days of Seb?
Yep.
And he used to name his chassis and he used to have ones that he never wanted to let go. And then he had ones that he was happy to see go. And there was a bit of a thing about 70 chassis, but he's asking, is it possible for an F1 team to have lemons of chassis, so dud chassis, or is it just different drivers in different chassis in different drivers' hands?
Yep.
And so his question is, even though that's a bit of a question, his question is, have you got a lemon of a car, an automobile, or it might be a bike in your past? And so for us, because we can talk about the Ricardo wanting a different chassis because he's not completely confident, and then Williams' claim that the damaged chassis that is in their pool, now they've got 2 of them, but it isn't any different, but I'm sure it's slightly heavier because repairs add weight, and it's probably slightly more flexible, or more importantly, maybe inflexible in certain points. So it's probably not quite behaving the way that they would absolutely love it to.
Yeah.
So that's potentially a lemon. Ricardo believes he's got a lemon. Different drivers have thought they've had lemons in the past. Have you had a lemon in your past?
I've had a lemon. Yeah, I reckon
We've
had one.
We've had fun with cars, haven't we?
We have had lots of good fun with cars. So I religiously have always in my life bought Nissans.
For those people new to the podcast,
but there are a couple people.
Tristan, and there are quite a few new people because they've been messaging in. Tristan and I grew up together. We met in high school, didn't we?
Yep, high school.
And we sort of, wandered through our schooling together, and by the time it was time for us to have cars, we lived near each other too, so we were often in cars together, weren't we?
Frequently.
Yep. So what was your lemon?
So I reckon I've had one. So I'll go through the history of everything that I've owned.
Okay.
Or owned, in air quotes. So I had with my dad the Suzuki Swift GDI.
Yep.
Which was...
That was a
terrific
little car.
Little 2-seater, dual clutch, 5-speed manual. Awesome. Loved it. Awesome. But then after that, I had my R31 Silhouette with... I had that. That was... The 31 was... was it my favourite? I reckon it was, which is a grey one.
We had a lot of fun in that.
We had a lot of fun in that because the driver's side door never opened. And the window didn't work. Remember that?
No,
sorry, the driver's side door. Sorry, the passenger one.
They started
failing frequently, but that thing was bulletproof. And so it was a passenger door. So every time you needed to get in, or anyone else needed to get in, you had to get in the driver's side first, and then amble across into the passenger seat every time. Any time I went through a drive-through at McDonald's, the window didn't work, so I had to open the door, which was really embarrassing. And you had to open the door and get your food. So that was great. The R31 was bulletproof. I reckon it was nearly 400 plus thousand Ks on it. Gunmetal grey. and light grey at the bottom. Daniel Vaines, who we went to high school with as well, he had it in a burgundy and a grey. We used to park next to each other at the top of the hill. And that was our thing on a Friday, and we thought we were cool. Yeah, I don't know how anyone else did.
No,
we did. Anyway, 31 was great. Had a 33 GDST, which, I mean, like, it turned out to be a lemon in the end. It's actually worth a lot of money now. I wish I still had it. I bought that as a grade 3 import from Japan. And, yeah, I love that to death.
By a bit of a lemon, it was absolute lemon.
That one kind of did. And
was it ever on the road?
Yeah, it was. But, I mean, it dropped a diff, thanks to me. And it also 2 head gaskets, thanks to me. Most damage was thanks to me.
Yeah.
In my Hoon days as well. So that's still around. If you come off the highway coming into our beautiful town where we live, it's actually, I sold it for $750. And I reckon it was a fan belt that was wrong with it.
Oh, jeez.
I know. I had a Veilside kit and everything with it. So that was cool. But my actual lemon after that was, I hate Holdens. Like, I hate them. And I swore in my life that I would never, ever buy one. But my lovely other half found one, which she thought was great to have. Like, it's like our little co-ownership car that we have. So that was a Barina CDX. And that was the biggest piece of crap that I've ever owned in my life.
I forgot you had the Barina.
It was plastic. It was just, I mean, it was cool. Like, it was cool. It was a little nippy little city run around.
It wasn't cool.
It wasn't cool.
No.
A few people referred to it as a hairdresser's car, which absolutely agree. But that was garbage. I remember the day that I traded it in, I reckon I blew the gearbox coming on the way down. Back to Nissan, when I now bought my Duke.
Oh.
Yeah, so back to Nissan. So, yeah, so the Barina would be my lemon. And I got $5,000 for that, and I sold it for $11,500. And I'll tell you what, it's not worth anywhere near either of those numbers, and there are that many things wrong with it. I know where it is too. It's in parked at the supermarket where my mum and dad live.
One of my favourite things to do in your what was your second car? Yeah,
the 33.
Yeah,
the white one.
You used to like sitting in at the lights. In gear with the clutch in.
Yes.
It was a bad habit that you're in.
Yeah, it was good.
And so I used to love just slipping my hand over and pushing it out of gear, and all of a sudden the lights are going.
And then encourage me to race anyone that was next to me, whether it be an 80-year-old lady coming home from the groceries, or a learner, or a dad, or whoever. And I needed minimal to no encouragement to do that from anyone.
Yeah,
and every single time without fail. Even I was disappointed when you didn't. And even when you didn't encourage me to do it, I generally did it every single time. Yep. And then, because I was a heavy clutch user, I just liked to put my foot on it all the time.
I know.
I felt good. And then next minute,
every day I could play that trick, really. Sometimes more than once a day.
Anyway, honestly,
good fun, wasn't it? For me, Suzuki Sierra had to be little matchbox full drive.
Green.
Great fun.
Awesome.
Like, couldn't get it bogged. Could not get it bogged as hard as we tried.
No.
The thing would just float across the top of little swamps and puddles and things like that.
It would float.
Oh, we had a good time. And it would fit between anything, so you could drive it pretty much anywhere.
Yep.
But it sort of probably came with a few issues. And then my lack of
made it what it was.
care looking after it didn't help it. But it was probably my lemon.
What about your Ute? You remember the red Ute?
The red Ute.
Sort of your murder vehicle.
That's what we used to say. Yeah. It was like, if someone annoyed me, like, get in the back of the Ute.
Yeah,
it was, I actually loved that Ute. It was, the only problem with it was it didn't have air conditioning.
No.
And being in Australia in summer, it was pretty hot, but God, it was comfortable, that Ute.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for those people listening, why we dubbed it the murder Ute, because it looked like, when you watch the news and you see, a house being taped off or whatever's in the driveway, or a suspect's vehicle, it looked like that.
Yep.
Like, you would not be surprised to see it.
Yep.
Did you see the news say the car rolled into the lake? Did you see that?
Today? No.
From where we went down now.
There you go.
Like, there you go.
Anyway, good question. Quick Kingsley's lemons. I think there was a Holden Chimera.
Yeah.
And a Leyland P76.
Oh, that's harsh, because I would heavily rate a Leyland.
Oh, well, I think he does too, but I think he
my
might
brother
have
had a Leyland.
He might have had a dud.
Lane had a Leyland, which was red, and then he progressively traded up to the Cooper S, which is, where is the Cooper? I don't know. It's in storage somewhere in Melbourne, which I wish he'd bring it home so I could drive it.
Anyway, good opening question.
There you go.
If you do want to knock Kingsley off, even though he's the official question giver, audio. If you can get us audio,
Yep.
that is the ticket. In fact, yeah, there's a bit of work for me to do on that one too, but yeah, we'll get in there. Give me your race ranking. Japan.
Oh, gee, tough one, this one. Because it was sort of business as usual, but there was a lot going on down the field. I'm going to give it a respectable 7.
A respectable 7.
Yeah, a respectable
Okay.
7. Like, it was good.
Yeah.
It wasn't great.
I think I agree with you on that
but also
one.
parts of it were great.
Happy to watch again. Watch out, everybody. Lots of people are enjoying the amount of spray that I use in these episodes. Tristan, duck, because there's mosquitoes. Even though it's very cold here at the moment, still
It's
mosquitoes.
15 degrees today.
Oh, it smells.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah, 7, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I tell you, one of the things that I love nearly the most of being at this track is because it has produced really great racing, but it generally needs some sort of weather outcome
Yes.
for some great racing at this joint. And that's not a knock on the track at all, but one of the things I do love about this track is onboard footage around Suzuka is everything, isn't it? It's a beautiful thing watching the onboard camera as they're doing their laps. And if you're in traffic, that's great. Like, if it's part of the race, it's great. But, like, the laps where it's a clear lap and they're just giving it everything, it is just such an interesting lap. And if riding along, it feels like a roller coaster ride.
Yep.
I think you can see why the drivers absolutely love this joint.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's one of the things I really loved about it. But, yeah, I thought it was a 7. There was enough interest going on across those behind Max.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, so I think that sort of worked out quite well.
And we didn't really see a lot of Max throughout the weekend either.
No, and it was one of those moments where they had to shine back to Max with his halfway to go in his last lap.
Just to remind us that he's out there and he's ahead and winning.
Yep,
so, yeah.
Yep, but yeah, so RedBull wouldn't be overly pleased with that because their sponsors aren't getting a lot of airtime, but hey, that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yep.
If you want more airtime, you better let down his tyres. Although that's what they want to do, isn't it? But yeah, so no, it was an interesting enough race, I thought. Qualifying fairly straightforward. There was a few little question marks as to whether RedBull was going to be able to be the RedBull of the first two races.
Yes.
Was it going to be more of the Melbourne RedBull? Is it the fact that other teams have caught up? And what we did see throughout this weekend is that everyone is closer to where Max and RedBull were at the end of last year, because this race was actually only towards the end of last year.
Yeah.
And so we did see, it was a really good comparison to see whether teams had caught up to RedBull and to Max. And we had seen across the board that everyone had done some catching up.
Yep.
Was it enough? No, sirree. No, Max ended up winning by a good 12 seconds from Perez, and then Perez was a little bit further ahead of everybody else. But it wasn't necessarily as straightforward. Qualifying, we saw Max get the job done. It wasn't a thrilling qualifying session, but it was an interesting one enough. I don't know that there was many major talking points. We just did see Ricciardo nearly make it through to Q3. It was very close, I think.
Tantalisingly close.
I think it was 500ths off, and so that was a bit of a tease. But it was nice to see that. Nice to see that he's closed that gap on Tsunoda, and what we're looking for is a really straightforward weekend for him to go and get his racing done and get his season back on track. And then we obviously saw the result of the race, which we can talk about in a moment. Probably the only other major talking point is Russell nearly ramming Oscar in the pits. But
yeah, a $5,000 fine.
So tell me about that one.
I'm not okay with that. Like,
what do you
think? Out of it.
What do you think? So it was Piastri in the pit lane.
Yep.
And Russell pretty much about to ram him unless he stops.
It was actually... It was probably the closest unsafe release that I think that we've had all year. No really round,
but not
4.
really unsafe.
No, but not.
So
really
that was the
unsafe.
funny one. That was the funny part about it. Was the fact that they weren't really moving, which made it almost they were moving, but not quickly down pit lane.
Yeah,
but it was the fact that it was just so blatant,
and
they did it wasn't like he couldn't see. Russell could see him there, but he just kept on going with it. And so I sort of thought, it's an interesting one. I don't know that I don't think it's a grid penalty. Is it?
I think it is, because I don't think it matters what time of the day or the session that it's done in. An unsafe release, I mean, which it was. Like, you can't argue the fact that it wasn't an unsafe release. It's exactly what it was.
It required Oscar to stop.
And he got very, very close to the left-hand side of the pit lane wall, which, I mean, if this is Q3, 7 minutes to go, it's a penalty. So I don't understand why in Q1, in the first opening minutes,
I think because they weren't really moving that fast. Like, I know you don't move fast in pit lane, but it was probably, I don't know, 10 k's an hour because everyone was held up.
Yeah,
there was just an unusual blatantness about it, wasn't there?
Yeah, and I mean, probably for me it magnifies it with so many out there as well. Like, it wasn't just your top 10 doing their last runs; it was everyone out there. So you had all cars. I don't know, it's just. You got to be consistent with that. Like, an unsafe release is an unsafe release. I saw a couple of social media comments where the passports have allegedly come out, and we've got British drivers who aren't getting penalised, and then we've got nationalities of other drivers that are getting penalised. And a little part of me, I don't know.
Like, you start to buy into it when you see the inconsistencies.
I do start to buy into that. Like, I really, really do. So, I don't know. Look, I mean, it certainly... It didn't put a sour note on anything for me, but we've got to be consistent with that. If it's just a flat out, here's the rule, unsafe release in the pit lane, it's either a penalty or it's not. So I'd be interested to see when we go to China, or when we go to somewhere like Austria with the RedBull ring, we're going to see them, I mean, we see them in Austria religiously there anyway, especially with the pit entry and exit and the scramble that it is to get out into your lap. We've just got to be consistent now. So if that's the precedent that's going to be set, and it's done early, then I would be more frustrated if now in a fortnight's time we go to China and we see a similar thing from someone else, and suddenly it's a grid penalty. I'll be frustrated when it comes to that.
It's also a problem caused by the FIA because of this business of you can't be slowing on track.
Yep.
You've got to be doing it in the pit lane. So all of a sudden the pit lane has become... I really feel like the pit lane needs to have 2 lanes.
Is the easy way around it just to go in order and just garage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then sort yourself out on track? Is it just the easy way to do it? Because I've never understood, and this is one thing that really
you want the strategy of being able to go out when you want to go out.
But you can see that everyone goes out at the exact same time. Like like Mercedes watch the field come down and then release them. Like that they literally have that person standing there at the box. You can see it happen. So why we continue to allow them just to release in the pathway of other vehicles, I don't know, it just dumbfounds me sometimes. When you've literally got your mechanic who's standing there watching it happen, but you still allow it to happen.
Part of the strategy.
Yeah, I don't know. And they eventually sorted it out on track anyway. But look, it's a good question. I'm interested to see what happens in the next fortnight or so. It's just, have we set a precedence? I don't want to see a penalty from someone else at the same period of time on a race weekend for something similar.
Coming into the race, Max he's led from the start. The first start, he led off well. It was a nice straightforward start. There's a part of everybody that sort of just hopes that he gets put under some pressure at the start because that's the most likely place to put him under pressure, but they seem to have their starts sorted. At one point, they were starting last year a little bit slower than everyone else, but yeah, that seems to have gone from what we're seeing. I think they're starting beautifully, and then we get through that first lap incident, and then he has to go and start again, and he goes and starts again beautifully, and off he goes. And it just seems like a really straightforward race for Red Bull. I'm not sure that Max is really pushing that hard, so we might have seen a little bit more from him.
Yep. They
might have been a little bit tentative with some of the issues last week in terms of not overdoing it, but mind you, that really felt like just a one-off incident. The brake holding on and then catching fire. But yeah, we saw him just sort of disappear into the distance. But after the race, Christian Horner had actually come out and said, look, it wasn't as straightforward. We were having a few issues with setup, and that the red flag actually helped them because what they had realised is pretty quickly is that they got their wing set up wrong, and it was actually going to cause them a few dramas, and the red flag allowed them to go and correct that. And so they corrected the front wing, and it just meant that their tyre deg wasn't going to be as bad as what they had feared they were looking at. And so yeah, the red flag sort of supported Max in finishing the race off really well, and then they found the right balance of the car, and they knew that the balance was going to come even as the race went on, and yeah, by the end of the race, he sort of had it all under control.
Some of the comments that you hear out of Red Bull, and it takes me back to 2019, 2020, can't remember which year, when Valtteri won in Australia. And we were there in the press conference in Australia, and Valtteri sat there in front of us and said, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. We're not quite sure how we're going to perform on the weekend. Straight out of testing out of Barcelona. And I thought to myself, you are kidding yourself. If you think you are not going to absolutely obliterate the entire field, and lo and behold, that's exactly what he did in Australia. So when Red Bull come out on a weekend and say, geez, we're having trouble with setup, and I use qualifying as a little bit of a reference. So the cutoff for qualifying was a 1:30. We were saying at the end of Q1, we're going to have a 1:30, maybe a 1:29.9 was going to be your almost safe distance. Max comes out and does a 1:28.8.
Yep.
And for me, qualifying is over, which is exactly what it was. It was over. And when Red Bull say that we're having some tricky challenges and things like that, you're not. You're not having challenges. You're having just minor inconveniences that it's not quite literally perfect in every single way, shape and form, but you have the driver and the chassis that is going to drive around every single issue. So when I hear that now on a race weekend, I'm not buying into it anymore.
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you, but they're
chasing perfection.
Yeah,
and that's what they're highlighting is we're having an issue.
I tend to agree.
Williams are having issues.
I tend to agree with you, but I also honestly believe they know that the field's coming to them.
I think they do.
And so I think they brought updates to this race.
Yeah.
And they didn't need to rush the updates.
No.
They could have held off, made sure of a few things, but they brought updates, and it took them a little while to understand these updates.
But is that also the luxury of the position that they're in, though?
Yeah, 100% it is. But for me, there's certainly an element of them being aware of what everyone else is doing.
Yep.
Everyone's closed the gap on them.
It's not enough
now,
to beat
the gap is still large.
The gap is still there.
And they still haven't been pushed.
No.
And that's the thing, if this Red Bull gets pushed,
yep,
does it fall apart? Does the team fall apart? Or does it just go faster?
Yep.
And I'll guarantee you 7 times out of 10 it just goes faster.
Yep.
At least. It's probably 9 times out of 10 it goes faster. It
That's
could be 10 times out of 10 it goes faster. But there is a genuine, we're not quite as comfortable as what we thought we were this time last year.
Yep.
We expected to be in this position, but yeah, look, for me, I think there is a little bit there, but I'm with you 100%. It's nothing to stress about.
No.
It's nothing to think, we're in for a great race next time round, because there's no evidence to suggest we're in for a great race next time round. No. The brake issue that they saw in Australia, that brake was only slightly on, but that's all it needs to be on to catch fire. Like if you're driving a car around at their speeds, if it's only slightly rubbing, that thing's going to catch fire. Yep. And so, yeah, it was just a slight issue, and we're not going to see them under huge amounts of pressure.
Absolutely not. It was still a 30-second deficit from Lando to Max, and he finished in 5th, and then the Ferraris one-stopped with incredible pace anyway. They had better pace than the Mercedes on a one-stop, and they were still 20 and 26 seconds afloat. So,
Perez finished in 2nd position.
Yeah, it was really
qualified in 2nd position.
Definitely his strongest race of the last 6 months.
This time last year, he'd won a couple of races.
Yep.
But yet this year feels stronger than last year.
Yep.
Do you agree with me on that? Even though he came out and won a couple of races last year, I feel like he's across the line in terms of he's doing what he needs to be doing, and he's doing it a lot calmer and a lot more in control.
Have we changed our tune and our perspective towards Checo? Is he flying under the radar because there's so much more happening around
There's other things to look at.
Like the Ferraris are on, so we're watching them closely.
Yep.
We're watching Sainz. We're watching Lando. We're watching Oscar. We're watching the fall of Mercedes, and we're watching Fernando do what he does best and just drag things across the line. So suddenly, And then Max is out front dominating, and it's the constant question of how many, how far, and how long for.
For me, it feels like Perez is doing the second position thing easier than what he was last year. Even though he got wins last year, I feel like he's more in control of the car. It doesn't seem like it's just it's an all or nothing situation for him at the moment. It just feels like he's a more together driver this year.
I think we're not paying attention to him, and there's also that pressure of Dan
not
hunting for that seat, which is now not there at the moment. So that narrative is added to it as well. So I don't think he's doing anything additional that's setting the world on fire. Like he was 5th in Australia or something like that. Forgive me if that's wrong, but he wasn't there again to take the win. He was so close to Max. But again, even if he had pipped him for pole, Max would have driven around him. Yep. So he's doing a good job, but he's certainly not. I think our attention is focused elsewhere.
The Australia result is the one that was like, what's happened here? But Red Bull in general, we're in that position, and it's always magnified more with Perez, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's a little bit more of an assured racer this year, and he's just a bit more comfortable in his position. And
okay.
Yeah, Horner's compliments towards Science seems to be getting a little stronger. But I mean in terms of that seat, Helmut Marko seems to be giving a few extra compliments than what we're used to, because obviously we know he's a driver that's left the team, and so they're not always overly complimentary to some of those drivers. But it feels like this might be hotting up to be a real option for Red Bull, and it's interesting that Horner sort of saying, Perez is doing what he needs to be doing, but he also was heard making the comment that, this is a contract year. Of course he's going to improve. And so it's a I don't know, it's a bit of an interesting one. Carlos Sainz back on the podium. He's been on the podium for every race he started this year.
Yes, 100% strike rate.
Yeah, he hasn't started every race this year.
No,
but
3 of the 4, but he's there.
Yeah, and it is nearly the performance of the year so far, isn't it?
Oh, that's a big call. I thought Australia was well above this.
No. He in general is the performer.
Oh, sorry.
Of the year. Performer, not performance.
I reckon he would be on a par with Yuki.
I would agree with that.
But poles apart in the standings.
It's a stellar result again.
Yep.
It was not necessarily as straightforward a race for Ferrari. I mean,
a little bit more hard fought.
There was things to be done to get his third. He had to get through drivers. He had to get through some traffic, and there was teams and drivers on different strategies, and so
their race
had
pace
to hold it together really well.
Yeah, their race pace in a tyre wear was very, very good, though.
Which is
very, very good.
Which is the new Ferrari.
Yes,
that was
last
their
year. The
Achilles
hards
heel.
When the hards came on, that was it.
Yep,
and that was their downfall.
Gone.
But that was their That's their strength at the moment,
and it feels like. Well, it felt like up until this weekend that Sainz was the one that was making this happen even more.
Yep.
But what we did see on the weekend is Leclerc pull off an unusual one-stop from 7th position to come into 4th.
Yep.
And it was just a really great race weekend from Ferrari. We've spent probably the last 5 years talking about Ferrari messing things up. If you could mess something up, Ferrari would do it.
Yep.
Feels like a different team now, doesn't it?
It does, yep.
It feels like they're going to go out. They took on 2 different strategies this weekend.
And both worked.
Yeah. And both worked to the best result they could have hoped for.
Yep.
Ferrari would have managed to mess up both those strategies, using one to mess up the other one.
Yep.
And so it was a great result, and I feel like both drivers had a really stellar weekend. Leclerc's drive on a one-stop, I thought was just magnificent.
Me too.
Even though he made a mistake.
Yes.
Lots of mistakes over the weekend throughout the race. It's one of those tracks that just keeps at you, doesn't it?
Yep.
And everyone ends up making a little mistake.
An updated suspension too for Ferrari as well that came to Japan.
Yes.
So it looked like it did wonders for them as well.
Yes. And I think that was this is all still around that tyre management, I think, is the main focus on this.
And they've sort of pulled back their top speed too. They were ranked 4th in top speed at 319 Ks, only a K behind the Saubers, and 2 Ks behind the Red Bulls.
Yep.
So I think they attributed to their tyre wear as well.
Yep, absolutely. Norris came in 5th. Decent drive from Norris. Not necessarily nailing the strategy, McLaren, though. probably could have pushed the Ferraris harder with a better strategy.
Their top speed is a concern.
It is a big
and
concern.
that's going to be a concern coming to China. So if you look at the sectors, Lando was fifth fastest in Sector 1.
Yep.
Then he was middle of the pack with Piastri in Sector 2. And then he was fifth slowest in Sector 3. Piastri, seventh slowest in Sector 3. So their top speed is a major concern.
Yep.
So I think to finish where they did, I think the track lent itself to the strength of the McLaren when we go to China in a fortnight's time.
Well, so this track, it lent itself to McLaren, but not to get the overtaking done, which we'll finish on Norris quickly. So Norris went with the early stop. It was to cover off a George stop.
Yep.
And it really messed around with the strategy from there. They went straight away into tyre conservation mode once he sort of got some overtakes done. But it limited his strategy a lot, and I feel like if they had have maybe held their ground, believed in the car a little bit more, I think maybe they could have got the job done. But their fear is that they weren't going to get overtakes done with their low top speed. And Piastri's big issue around his race, I mean, he had a pretty decent race with decent pace, but he was really struggling without that speed and on the straights to get the overtakes done. And he was clearly faster than Alonso, but he couldn't get that overtake done to drive off from Alonso, and that cost him big time. And I'm with you 100%. One thing I said to somebody today is, McLarens are going to struggle big time with that big long straight in China.
Yes.
I wonder if they're going to be trying something a little bit different to see if they can drop a little bit of drag. There's not going to be a lot they can do.
I don't think it's going to matter. Their slow speed corner entry and exit was their strength. Like Lando was quickest in turn 2, 4, 5, 9, which is Degner 2. Then you've also got 13, 16, and 17.
That's slow speed corners and high speed corners. Like their high speed corners are fine as well.
Yep.
So it was it's going to be a struggle for them. But the Piastri race, thoughts on his race?
Just a respectable race weekend. I don't know.
Was it respectable in the end?
Yeah, I think so, because the McLaren was not quite. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be really track specific where the McLaren's strength and weakness is. So Australia, incredibly strong. This weekend, middle of the road. China in a fortnight's time. It's damage limitation for them. But then we'll go back to, we're going after China. I think we're going to Miami.
Yep.
That should be a strength of theirs, because there's a lot of slows. I think Italy. I think Imola. Imola's the week after Miami. But once we go back to Miami, slow speed corners through there. Yes, there are some high speed sections, but there's more slow speed corners through there. So that's going to be probably just your on par weekend. Then we're going to go to Imola. That's going to be a strength of theirs as well. But then look what happens. I mean, Monza's a little bit away. They've probably got some time, and everyone's got a Monza package. But I think that's what we need to expect of the McLaren. They're kind of on a par with the Astons as well, or Fernando's Aston at least, and then it's going to be really track specific for them.
Yeah, he needed an overtake. He desperately needed an overtake. I'm not sure that being up against the wily old fox of Alonso cost him big time as well.
Absolutely.
I think if it was somebody else, maybe there's a better way through, but he desperately needed the overtake, and he had a couple of cracks at it, so he worked, and I liked the way that he worked his way into, right, I'm going to have a go at this. Wasn't working for 5 or 6 laps, so he dropped back, conserved the tyres, because that was his major weakness here last year. The tyres dropped off, so he knew what he was doing there. Then he went and had another go at it, couldn't make it happen. Tried the undercut, couldn't make that happen.
They were pretty on a par with their pace with Fernando, and
they were, but overall they would. If he had been able to get in front, he would have driven off on Alonso. Yeah. He had some faster pace, but didn't have the fast pace where it was needed to get past them, and so. Yeah, and then just to get done by Russell just on the last lap, I was like, it's a bit disappointing. It dropped away a little bit. If he had been able to hold that 7th position, I would have been like, yeah, it's a pass. But I feel like he's probably failed this weekend in terms of a little bit more progression would have been nice. It would have been nice to see him get that overtake done, but we do know he's up against one of the best. Yeah,
McLaren's pace overall compared to last year, just on like 0.9. 0.9, so just on a second quicker than last year, but not huge. The Aston was 1.87 quicker than last year, so they big improvers there.
Yep.
So not a huge Yeah, not a huge improvement just here at Suzuka.
Yeah, I wouldn't compare them to the Aston, because the Aston at this time of the year,
they're terrible.
Remember, they're going through their moment of, we've done these upgrades that have made us really slow.
They're working backwards too.
Yeah, so, but I think they were on par with most in their performance.
McLaren fans need to strap themselves in.
It's a roller
for
coaster.
The year.
Yep. But I think we'll probably see more tracks that they suit than don't suit.
Absolutely.
But I'm with you.
Absolutely.
China's going to be a bit of an interesting one for them. I think they could be sitting ducks unless something can be done. Alonso and Aston Martin in general, it was a typical Alonso race. He said it was one of his 5 best races. I don't think it was even in his top 20 best races, but it was a decent performance. His comment around that is that he didn't think that the car had that performance in it. He felt like it was all down to Alonso. It's pretty much where he was trying to say it, which is a very Alonso thing to say, particularly around this time of year where he's trying to find a really nice contract somewhere, like a RedBull. Thoughts on his race?
Yeah, it was really, really good. He certainly put in the performance in qualifying. What was he, 5th in qualifying, especially on that second run? Really, really good. And then just worked his way through the race beautifully.
Yep.
Again, outshone his teammate by a long, long way, and then finished. What did he finish overall? Just
6th.
Yeah, 6th overall. So that's good, especially with the Ferraris in and around him, and the McLarens in and around him. I mean, that was really their race across the weekend.
To beat a McLaren and 2 Mercedes is a real tick for him.
I don't know that beating the 2 Mercedes is a tick at the moment.
No, well, but it is, because he's not beating them all the time. And I mean, I know the Mercedes isn't necessarily performing, but they're around them, and so you want them behind you. Not beating the Mercedes is a cross, isn't it?
Yeah.
So beating, beating it's a tick.
Point.
Like, you want to keep them behind you.
Yep.
They're close. I agree. I think he, in the Aston Martin, is quicker than both Mercedes, probably at the moment.
Yes.
However, those Mercedes are very temperamental things.
Yeah.
They can show some really great pace, and then all of a sudden they don't show much pace at all. Let's go to Suki Lala.
Oh, who's that?
Mr. Stroll.
Oh, dear.
Have you heard teenagers' voices break?
I have, actually.
Yeah, that was him a lot of the time. I was listening to a lot of team radio during the race this weekend, and they played one towards the end where you could hear him sooking about how this car is so slow.
Oh, the GP2 engine reference.
Yes,
saw that
but
on socials.
he was sooking it up throughout the whole race like a little baby. Okay. And I tell you what, it was like... he's lucky that the lot wasn't shown, because there would have been a lot of hate to it. Like, if the broadcasters had played a lot of what he was going on with, it would have been embarrassing. You couldn't really tell what he was talking about some of the time. It was just but oh my goodness, it was a woeful performance. Qualifying was terrible. He managed to drive the car up to 12th, but that car is well and truly a top 10 car. Poor.
And had the full upgraded package too. Full upgrades to side pod.
Yes, but different setups, which this was interesting, and I meant to go and find out a little bit more. Aston Martin aren't overly open with the way that they're running cars, and it's probably a little bit biased, but I always put it down to they're protecting Lance in terms of Lance's performances. But it mightn't be. It might just be their strategy, but they're not overly open. But Alonso was running a different setup, same hardware, but different setup to Lance, and obviously Alonso's was working a whole lot better. But it was a poor weekend from him, but we'll see. I think they will be stronger. I mean, their straight line speed isn't fantastic either.
No, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if they bring a second package. If they bring a second package and give it to Fernando, it'd be interesting to see what he's able to do.
He got the package.
He got it.
So Lance started with it. Alonso stayed on the old.
I was going to say, because
and then he picked it up.
Of the side pod,
but they were running different setups of it, so they were running slightly different. Well, the wing angles were slightly different, and all the other bits and pieces, and so it was an interesting one. It'll
definitely come down to time management then. That'll be the key to success.
Yeah, but I'm not entirely sure that they're overly fast in a straight line either.
I don't think so either. But there's certainly, I think they should definitely outrace both McLarens in a fortnight's time. Mercedes, well, I don't know. You could probably say they'll outrace the Mercedes as well. I think I'd be shocked if they don't. You're right in what you're saying. I think if they don't outrace the Mercs, then that would be...
Yeah, I'm not convinced in China. I think generally, but I'm not convinced in China. Okay. I'm not sure they've got that top line speed either. Over to the Mercs. Russell, a bit of an interesting weekend from Russell.
Yeah.
Sort of showed a little bit here and there, but
seventh in the end.
This is generally the way the Mercedes is. They'll sort of show something and then drop away. They came out of the race feeling a whole lot more confident because the whole year's been, we show some pace and then it's completely missing.
Yep.
And then it'll reappear through a race for a bit and then it'll go missing again. And so, yeah, they don't seem overly on top of the car. However, they were talking like they felt like they had made improvements this race.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's an interesting one. Lewis came out of the weekend feeling a whole lot more confident with where they were.
But then still finished ninth.
He actually suggested that Russell overtake him, which was an unusual one.
But then that's what we've been saying. That's a man with his feet up.
Yeah. Well, it felt a little bit that way. He came out and said he believed that he had car damage.
He did. He had a front wing sort of.
Yeah. And so he thought he wasn't sure.
Winglet on the end plate, I think, was all he was missing, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is actually a lot when you think about the aero efficiency that comes off that front wing.
And so, it was his suggestion. Well, should Russell overtake me here? And so, it's sort of... I'm not sure we saw the full package over the weekend. They also probably messed up their strategy pretty badly. I don't know that either of them nailed their strategy in the end. And so, it was a bit of a bitter weekend, but they're probably happy enough to end up in the points, I reckon.
They're a midfield team now, aren't they?
They're back of the second tier.
I think they are the last team.
I'm not sure there is a midfield.
No, I think there's
a front two. Then there's the next lot.
Well, I think the order for me is Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston, Mercedes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
That's your top five.
But the next lot are so far behind.
Yeah, it's two separate.
Yeah. Anyway, man, Yuki Tsunoda is having a season, isn't he?
He is having a good season. So 7 points.
Yep.
7 points. First 4 races looks like this. 14, 15, 7, and 10.
Thoughts?
Is he having a better... Is his season... I mean, his season is looking very, very good. I think his qualifying pace is excellent.
Yep.
I think the first 2 races, not great. 14th,
terrible.
15th,
I would say terrible, yeah.
Not great, really. When you think about comparative to Dan outraced him in Bahrain.
Yep.
And then he outraced him in Saudi. And then Dan 12th in Australia. And then he 7th in Australia.
Yep.
So they're probably on a par, to be quite honest.
Generally what we're saying is he was qualifying well, Dan wasn't qualifying well.
But then
they'll come together.
They'll come together.
Throughout
and then
the race.
It will just sort of be...
Yep.
Yeah. Yuki sort of doesn't go much further because I think that's the limitation of the RB. But then Dan, being a little bit of a slower qualifier at the moment, can drag it back. And you're right, they generally come together at the end of the race.
But what we did see in the last week and this week is that he managed to transfer that into a decent race result.
Yep.
Now, I mean, there was a few things that worked for him at this race. He had a really great the pit stop, the five-way race pit stop where he managed to come out in front of that, and that made a big result for him. And there was a couple of really great overtakes, which I thought was really impressive. But no, I feel like to be best of the rest 2 weeks in a row is a good result.
He probably is best of the rest, because if you look at his points, he's on 7. Ollie Behrman has 6 points from his one race in Saudi.
He was driving a Ferrari.
Yeah, he was driving a Ferrari. And then you've got Hulkenberg, which we've been lauding for the last few weeks, and we kind of should be. 3 points. We've said position 10th that's the golden point. It's up for grabs. Most weekends, I think we've seen now.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think he is best of the rest, which is probably what's making his season a little bit more remarkable, because I don't think when you look at the list of drivers in that bottom tier of the championship at the moment, I don't think any of us had Yuki as the top runner for that.
Well, you say that, but we both had RB as that position.
We did have RB at that position.
But we were probably thinking it was going to be their man,
that's
wasn't
exactly,
it?
Yeah, and then I look at the likes of Alex Albon, who, I don't know... Last year could have had any drive he wanted. I think at the moment, not really having a great season.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
No points?
I'm not entirely sure that he can be spoken about for this race, but yeah. In terms
What did you
of,
make of the racing incident, by the way? We haven't talked about that yet.
No, we haven't.
Dan
I was about to.
You're about to jump
I was
in
about
that,
to get into it. But yeah, look, I mean, so Dan had a much better qualifying.
Yep.
Then he and Yuki had a terrible start because they were started on
Very
the mediums
much bogged
compared to those around him on the softs.
Yep.
And it was all of a sudden they were in amongst it, and it was probably, I mean, you think back to it, like, is this the right spot to be starting on those mediums?
And through the S's is a
that's right. Like,
place
do
to want to be.
we really want to be dropping back into the field through the S's? And yeah, the fact that they both had a bad start cluttered the racetrack even more. Look, it was a racing incident. I can't see how anyone can say that.
Yep.
I mean, some people were saying that Albon probably shouldn't have been there.
I kind of agree with that a little bit.
But the issue with that is it was the inside of the track.
Yeah.
In the corner before it.
And I think the softs sort of launched him into there. I don't think he planned to be there, but the softs certainly launched him up in there.
It was just a combined bunch of errors.
Yep.
Ricciardo, I mean, I don't know, you're going through S's, I don't know how anyone can be saying that Ricciardo shouldn't have been moving across.
No, he needs to be back on the racing line. He can't be in the middle of the S's because it compromises you
and particularly,
as you work your way through them.
Like, for me, I felt like he was moving over while Stroll wasn't moving over to him.
Yeah.
What he was aware of is that Stroll will come to the next corner. Stroll will be moving across that track.
Yep.
So I think he's just trying to give himself more room. It was a purely racing incident. The problem with it was a racing incident that neither driver needed. Like, if there was two drivers, you could say, God, I hope they don't get a crash at the start of the race. It was those two drivers. We really wanted to see Ricciardo having a great race. From a decent starting point, I mean, the start didn't help with that, but then the car probably would have helped with that.
That's very true.
It would have been great to see him race. And then obviously Albon with his chassis issue. It was just so happened that it was the two drivers that desperately didn't need that result. But yeah, I don't know. I feel, in a weird way, I feel frustrated, but I also feel happier that Ricciardo seemed to be back in control of that car, because the other thing that Ricciardo didn't get this weekend is much time in the car.
No, he sat out from Iwasa's time.
Yeah,
in
so he missed FP1, that's fine.
And I'm okay with that. I think
that was locked in from the start of the season.
And I think it's perfect too, because you got your Japanese driver at home in Japan. I think it's perfect.
Yep,
like,
absolutely.
Awesome.
And then they got rained out of FP2.
Yep.
And so he got FP3 and then managed to put together a really great result off that limited running. And so I was like, yes, we're there. And so I do feel like maybe, we've turned a corner. Lots of people have been like, is he finished? Is Ricciardo finished? And for me, it's a really frustrating question, because, like, it's really hard to answer it without sounding biased.
Yeah.
But for every Ricciardo result, there's been a reason behind it. And I know that reasons aren't excuses, but there's been reasons behind all the results. And so it's just, I don't know, there's just a bunch of different things that sort of led up to it. And like he said this weekend, it wasn't a continuation of bad things going on. No. It was just a one-off. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
Your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. We need a result. We really, really do. Like, we need some points in China.
Yep.
We need a couple just to silence the critics. Just to calm the waters. Just to calm the waters and just get everyone seen nicely.
Yep.
I hope it comes. I mean, we know last year's RB19 was really, really difficult to drive. Checo showed that. I wonder if we're now starting to see that too. And that maybe while he did a terrific test in the RB19 on the different tyre compound around Silverstone, I wonder if he's having, now that he's had time in it, I wonder if he's having some difficulty coming to terms with it like Perez did across the season. I just wonder if that's starting to transfer across.
Yeah.
It's just something I've been thinking about. Like, yeah. At the start of the year, the RB19 was really on it. If this is the alleged carbon copy,
it's not.
That's just if it is.
Yeah.
Like, as we're starting to see, it was really, really difficult to handle at the back end of last year. If it is that copy, we just starting to see that transfer across to Dan. Maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's a range of things. I find the chassis thing an interesting one. So new chassis is coming to the team.
Yep.
Yuki's very comfortable with his chassis, obviously, and so they've come out and said, look, here's a new chassis. Let's just make sure we've ticked that box to make sure that you know that you're comfortable with the car.
Yep.
And so that'll be an interesting watch to see if there is any difference there.
Yeah.
But I always find like I said, there's been a reason for all the results. There's been a 40-second pit stop in there.
Yep.
There's been just crossing the white line where you shouldn't have. There's been what was the first? Oh, the first race was he made a mistake on his qualifying lap, which just pushed him back. But then he drove forward in the race. Like the actual race was fine.
Yep.
And it was just that qualifying, he made that mistake. And there's been now 2 mistakes through qualifying, but it's not the end of the world. It's just, it's one of those things that it's just taking a little bit of time. But no, I'm quite confident with where he's at. I'm not sure that he's completely been pantsed by Yuki, even though it does look like it from the outside. However, it's hard to say that without sounding biased because we're both big fans of the man.
Yep.
Hulk, once again, great result. 11th.
Awesome result.
Didn't quite get the points.
No, but that's okay. I'm all right with you getting them at home. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm on the Haas bandwagon for this year.
And it's an unusual thing to say.
It is an
I
unusual
don't know that
thing to
people have
say.
ever said this
No,
before.
I don't think so either.
Maybe that year one.
Yeah.
People were very happy with
Maybe when they were new. So, yeah, I'm on it. I'm on the bandwagon.
Yep.
Hulk's the lead driver there.
K-Mag.
K-Mag was pretty good. Like
He had a better race.
I mean, like 13th, he's all right. That Aston really should be ahead of them.
Yeah,
so I think
it's where you'd expect to be.
Full credit for Hulk for beating the other Aston.
Yep.
But I mean, the Aston should be ahead of both of them. And 13th for K-Mag as well. So awesome. I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw an early one out there. I'm going to go double points in China. Like I'm not just
bad.
10th. I'm going to go
bad.
double points in China.
Not bad. I don't mind that call.
For both best top speed of anyone at Suzuka. By a long margin as well.
I don't mind that call.
And I think that's I think I'm gonna hang my hat on that.
Bottas into 14th. It sounds like a good result.
It does sound.
However, there's 3 drivers that DNF'd. And
what, they have like an 8-second pit stop or something like that this weekend, which
Bottas,
is all right.
Bottas had a quicker one, but but he really only beat the Alpines.
Yeah,
which unfortunately at the moment just isn't anything to write home about.
Absolutely nothing to write home about.
He did also beat Sargent. However, Sargent did a very Sargent thing where he was looking like he was having a decent weekend.
It was Degnatui come right off. Was that race or qualifying? It
was
race, wasn't it too?
Yep.
Right off in Degnatui.
So it looked like he was having a good race weekend.
Yep.
And it's a very Sargent thing to do this. And then out of the blue, he'll make a big blue, which just costs him everything. And once again, it costs him everything. So
I'm still not quite recovering from Australia with Logan, so I'm just going to give him he's got a couple of weeks of just a free pass with me.
Which is pathetic.
Yeah, I'd say
that's a pathetic attitude.
That's my sympathetic sort of.
Yeah. Well, yep. So anyway, getting back to Bottas, it looked like a good result, but he was probably going to be behind Sargent in the race, which would have meant that he just only beaten the Alpines, which is pretty much what he should be doing. Alpines are Alpines at the moment. They did manage to crash into each other. I thought, oh, here we go, a bit of spice, but they're so far back, I don't think they cared or the team cared.
And that's what Esteban Ocon does when he has a teammate in the same team as him. He likes to crash into him.
Yeah, so, yeah.
It's not a new thing.
Let me hear your 3, 2, and 1s.
My 3, 2, and 1s.
Thanks to All Signs. All Signs get all your signage needs.
3 to Perez.
3
just for pushing Max as close as what he did.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, not bad. I'll allow that.
Yep. 2 to Charles.
Long stint.
8th to 4th. I mean, it's not brilliant, but it's really, really good. He really shouldn't have been there in qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, so that's fine there.
Yep.
And one has to go to Yuki for points at home.
Yuki points at home.
Yep.
He's fun to watch at the moment too, isn't he?
Yep, he's fun to watch.
Yeah. Look, I'm gonna go 3 to Sainz.
Okay.
It's just he's just doing a beautiful job at the moment.
He can have any seat he wants on that grid.
Well, you would think that, wouldn't you?
Yep.
However, he hasn't got any seat on that grid at the moment.
Oh yeah, I know he hasn't. He can have it though. He can. I don't think the decision is up to the team. The decision is up to Sainz if he wants to go to your team or not. It's actually not the other way around.
RedBull?
No.
No, sorry. Yeah. Is RedBull offering him a seat?
They probably are, but he's saying no.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Why would you say no to that team?
I think they've shown in the past that once you're out, you're out. Dan's the exception because of Horner's
love
and admiration for him. And because Dan left them...
I don't know that many people go back, though. Like, Dan's gone back.
But Dan left in
they wanted him back.
Dan left in a different way, where he left when they wanted him. Science was on loan. That's different. Whereas he wasn't so much sacked, but they were quite happy to loan him out to Renault. But Dan's the outlier there because of the way he left. Albon left because the team told him to leave. Seb left because he just, air quotes, deliberately failed results to go to Ferrari.
Yep.
And then you've also got Gasly, who was booted. Science was put on loan.
Yeah,
Dan bailed on them.
I think Red Bull's holding everyone up because they're not making choices at the moment. And I don't know that they've put out a request for Science, but I think they would have, everyone's talking to everyone. And I imagine they would have said to him, don't sign with anyone yet. We're still working it all out. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a Red Bull. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a Mercedes. And there's obviously Audi are desperate to go and sign him. And they're trying to put some pressure on, saying, look, we need an answer soon. They don't need an answer soon. They're not even going to be a decent team for 3 years. So I'm not sure why they need an answer soon, but they're just obviously trying to play the game. Let's push it on. So, yeah, I think it'll be, once Red Bull make up their mind, I think we'll start seeing some things shift and move. And I don't know how Red Bull can make up their mind just at the moment. But, oh man, I mean, it's almost a good excuse to go and say, rightio, Science, you're driving so beautifully, we can't not sign you. So we're going to go and do it. And then I think everyone understands the Perez issue.
Yeah.
Well, we're going and got the form driver.
Yep.
We're going to get the best we can after Max.
Perez says that he'll know in a month.
Yeah.
We'll expect to know in a month. And I think probably Red Bull, it sounds silly, but they don't have as much time as everyone else has.
No, because they've got to be first.
Well, I think also that they've got the pick of the bunch at the moment because...
Red Bull?
Because Checo is an option.
100% is an option.
Dan is an option. For me, Yuki is an option as well. So they've got 3 options in their own stables.
Do you not think that Yuki's just a flash in the pan?
No, I don't. He's built.
Yeah, he has. But we've also seen this season.
Yeah,
he's blown up.
I'm okay with
and I've got no doubt. Yeah, but they don't need 2 drivers blowing up. Like Yuki hasn't got the talent.
Fully don't need it, but I think
Yuki hasn't got the talent to blow up. Max can do whatever the hell he likes.
Yeah.
Because he's got the talent to go and back it up.
Yuki will play.
He's gone okay, but he hasn't gone okay until this season. Like this is the first season we've seen him show something,
and that's the perfect timing for it because seats are available. So if you're gonna show something, it's now, and that's why I mentioned with Alex too. At the moment, like last year, if all these seats are available,
there was talk of him going.
Alex has any seat he wants. When you get to round 20 at the end of last year, you go, Alex, you can go where you like. You're the form driver of the year. Right now,
you're missing one.
There's plenty.
Alonso has gone and said, I'm not excited unless it's Red Bull.
And you know what? I don't know. I think Aston is where he'll stay.
Alonso, I'll tell you exactly where Alonso's at.
Yep.
With Red Bull. Alonso is Red Bull's Max backup.
Yep.
If Max ever tries to pull the pin and leaves the team, and I'm feeling like that's less likely. It seems like everything's calmed the hell down. It feels like if Max happened to leave, Alonso's our break glass in case of emergency because they know that he'll go and win him a world championship with a good car.
What about Seb?
Seb, it's not happening.
What about Seb? Let me throw you the tin hat conspiracy theory.
As much as we have been sending each other messages about it,
I saw an interview, and his comment at the end of the interview was, if the package is right and the right drink is in the bottle. And man, oh man, that sent people into us, including myself. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, drink, bottle, Red Bull, yes.
Yeah. It's it can't possibly happen. But the part that I love most about it all, is his comments fired up the conversation.
Love it.
Toto had every opportunity. Sorry, not Toto. Toto had every opportunity.
Toto says he's got 3 drivers.
He had every opportunity to say that Seb wasn't one of them. Did he not?
But he didn't.
But he refused to.
So maybe Seb is.
No one actually said he said one of those drivers. But he had every opportunity to say no. But he only increased the speculation with his comments. Look, as much as we've been texting about it, I would be blown away. And Formula One does this to us every now and then. The Lewis call, the Seb's move from Red Bull call, even the Ricciardo call. Sometimes Formula One blows us away.
Maybe.
We don't expect it. But this one, I will be absolutely dumbfounded if they're going to Seb at this time of his career, because the end of Seb's career wasn't that great. And so what makes them think that he's going to be a great person now? But I would love it. I'd be down for it. I'd be keen.
I'm very down for it.
Anyway, back to my points.
Oh.
3 to Sainz, 2 to Leclerc, and 1 to Yuki. I thought it was,
Good.
dud of the day. Duds are hard to find at the moment.
Duds?
Yeah. You got one?
I could load up this week on duds.
Oh, beautiful.
I thought there were lots of duds.
Well, there's some obvious duds,
Yep.
but I feel like we've done a good job of not being obvious with our duds lately.
No.
In the last couple of years, we're not so obvious with our duds. There's obviously Sargent. There's obviously...
No.
There is.
No.
There's obviously Kick Sauber
Yep.
for not being able to fix things quickly enough.
Not being able to do a pit stop correctly.
There's obviously Williams. They should be just dudded automatically for messing up this chassis situation over and over and over and over and over.
Williams is very...
What do you got for me?
Yeah, Williams is my number one dud for the weekend.
Okay, go on.
Number one, because it's alarm bells should be ringing right now at Williams. The drivers are not finishing races. They are chassisless in terms of spare.
Well, spare. Even the good one's got to go back
This
now.
is what I'm saying now. Both are putting them in the wall. They're not getting results they are after. Their drivers are just not doing what they should be doing. They've got the spare chassis, which is not built. It's unavailable. It kind of feels like that there's financial pressure now, because we know James Vowles is looking at building infrastructure for the future. That's coming at the cost of race weekends. It's coming at the cost of actual results as well. So I think James Vowles is under a huge amount of pressure, and Williams have massively dropped the ball this year, because they finished last year so strong, and this should be either holding station or just taking a small step forward. And right now they're doing neither of those things. Neither.
Yep.
They're the biggest disappointment of the year so far. More disappointing than Alpine. Alpine, we can give excuses and reasons why. Williams are on the up trajectory.
Is there a part of you, though, that loves that they've gone for performance and that they're not...
No, not now.
And that they're not the back marker, though?
No, not now at the moment, because they're putting it in the wall every weekend. I say every weekend. They've had 2 shocking weekends in a row, so no, right now, it's
so there's a racer in me that's like, yeah, I can we would have been really critical of them if they had gone back to the back of the pack.
You can be proud of them for putting performance.
And so
I
do like that. It's just it is backfired so drastically,
and that's exactly it. It
and
has
in front
backfired.
of everything, and so.
Yep.
Yeah, it hasn't looked good, but there's still a part of me that's like, you know what? Good on them for going and getting performance. And because they have got performance, they're up there with the RBs and they're up there with the Haas, which is a strange thing to be saying, as the next best team. They're not quite there, but that's because now, and the rest of the season is going to be compromised because they've had to spend all this time fixing their problems. That it's taken the focus away from that development. But there are still upgrades coming. He did come out and say, look, it isn't at the expense of upgrades, it's just at the expense of how quickly we can produce upgrades.
I don't know.
But they're still developing them, they just can't produce them. I think for me, it's a shock to me how far behind the world of Formula One they were with their manufacturing.
Yep.
In terms of this team's been together for a long time, their processes and their facilities are so far behind everybody else.
Yep.
It is astounding to think that that's where they're at. And so they've got to get that under control real quick.
I think so too.
And I know James Vowles is the absolute person to get this sorted.
Absolutely is the person to get sorted.
However, Dorrington really need to make sure that they come in with the infrastructure, with the support. For me, you know what, I don't know if they got the money, but if I was them, I'll go out and break the cost cap and just go and get things done and wear it. It's almost the same strategy as what they're doing at the moment, but just go and wear some. Or you just got to somehow get back ahead of the thing, back ahead of the the ball. You just got to go and find it. I mean, the ramifications would probably be a whole lot more severe if you're deliberately going to break the cost cap, but they've got to go do something significant like that just to get ahead of the rest of the pack. And so, yeah, they've got to get this infrastructure sorted.
Yep.
They've got to get the processes sorted. They've got to get the manufacturing sorted, and it's got to happen really quickly. But unfortunately, on this sort of scale of things, it's not going to happen quick. It's going to be a couple of years down the track.
I would predict by the next, I'm going to give about 6 races. I'm going to say like Barcelona. By the time we get to Barcelona, they'll be last in the championship.
Yeah.
Sauber will have got their point.
Yeah.
Because Sauber are very unlucky to not have had points. They should have had points and they didn't.
They've had the speed.
So they've been
to
there.
potentially
They've
get
been
points.
in the position to get points. Alpine are beginning to get their act together, and they honestly, one of them will.
I agree. They will start to
they've
understand.
They've had 2 13th and a 15th.
Yeah.
Some race weekend somewhere, the weather gods are going to shine on them. We're going to have one of those out of the box weekends, and they're going to fall across the line in 10th. They're going to get their point. Right now, at the moment, they're not looking like it with Williams. 15th, 11th, a retirement, a 20th, a 14th, a withdrawal, and then a 17th as well.
Yep.
For a team that was on the up with one driver that was absolutely ready to take the F1 world by storm, we're not really anywhere at the moment. So tough times ahead, alarming times. Alarming.
When the focus is all on this fix-it job rather than
absolutely.
Let's go ahead.
And you can't applaud them for going for performance.
While the designers are all going after the other thing,
it's
sort of that whole team drive of, right, let's get the next going. Let's get the next going, yeah. I'm with you. It's concerning. You got any other duds that you want to mention?
No, that's all I really want to mention.
That's
this week
the main
was
one.
my number one.
All right, F1.5.
F1.5, I think we're going to probably... Let's lock these people in. I'm going to give you locks, and then I'm going to give you some maybes I'm sitting on. Alrighty?
Interesting.
All right. So Sargent, Bottas, Gasly, Ocon, Dan, Zhou, Albon, K-Mag, Hulk. They're my locks. So they're in. I'm going to throw a maybe on Yuki.
Come on.
I'm just going to throw a maybe.
You can't be holding him back from a championship because he's going well.
I'm just going to throw a maybe.
Okay.
And then I'm going to throw a maybe on Lance as well.
I don't mind the Lance call.
I'm just going to throw a maybe.
I don't mind the Lance call. It's an interesting one.
Lewis, I don't know. I am but probably not.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I don't mind the Lance call.
And this throws me back to the Alex Albon Red Bull days where people sort of went hammer and tongs like, you've got to have... Like, you can't have one driver in, the other one out. Yes, you can. So anyway, what are your thoughts?
Yuki's got to be there because he's of the machinery.
All right.
And I don't mind the Lance call, but I'd hate for Lance to win it. I mean, that, like you said, you rate that 4th fastest. Feels like it's a long way out, but yeah.
Anyway, I said 5 weeks, so that's what we're looking at for 5 weeks.
So we're looking at F1.5 next episode.
Yes, which I will go back and painstakingly go back and calculate.
You have to make up your mind then, aren't you? Because that's going to take some time.
Yeah, well, it won't take too long. But anyway, I'll go back. So by China, yes, we'll make a decision. And then at the end of China, I'll give you the updated. I'll give you Bahrain, Saudi, Australia, and Japan. And then maybe China. If we've got time.
Tell me, you're going to 21st century it and put it on a computer, or are you going to stick with a book?
No, I just think book and pen is the way to go. I'm more of a... Yeah.
I know you are. Yeah. You're a scribbler. There's no doubt about you.
I feel like if it's in front of me, I don't have to log in and I don't have to charge it. And you know when you go to do something and you're like, oh, I've left my charger, it's flat, now I've got to wait. Then you stew on it, you've got a book, a pen, sort it. I'm old school with things like that.
Dr. Auto Art are our sponsors of fantasy. I've had some people come in and check out their headquarters in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, good. What did they think?
And they absolutely love it. They
Brilliant.
love the big light box, thanks to All Signs. It is an amazing light box. In fact, we've got to get a good picture up online. And then, the Dr. Auto Art prints on the side. Well, they're not prints. What are they? What are they called when they're done individually?
Just
artwork pieces. So the Dr. Auto Art.
Yeah.
Alonso Ricardo pieces either side. It just looks magnificent. I think, though, we're going to have to get some downlights onto these artworks.
You mentioned that last week, didn't you?
I think it's going to have to
I don't know if it was on the pod, but you mentioned that. We certainly talked about it, but you need something that's going to
Yeah.
That's going to illuminate them and make them look good.
Well, when the light box is off, they pop, but the light box is quite bright. So, we're going to have to work on something around that. Anyway, fantasy.
Fantasy for this week. Thanks to Chris, Dr. Auto Art, Facebook, Instagram, RedBull.
Helmets.
Email, helmets.
All the things.
Art prints, all the great things. Check him out. We'll put a couple of photos up, I think, this week in the raceless weekend of some of Chris's things. All right, let's go to Japan. Let's go to the top 10. I'm going to give you top 10 point scorers from Japan this weekend. In first place, Danielson Musila. I've been practicing names on the way over.
Well
Bring
done.
back Kalami GP, 334 points. Pulled the trigger on the Limitless. I've been talking about this every weekend. China, fortnight time, sprint race.
Yeah, but
That's your Limitless chip. So that gives you as much money as you like. You can have anyone you want.
Which is the one that you can change after qualifying?
That's I forget what that's called.
I very nearly
Pulling
went
the
with
trigger on one of those.
I very nearly went with that this week.
So Limitless is a fortnight's time.
Okay.
It is sprint race weekend for your Limitless. 334, he had Max, Checo, Lando, Oscar, Leclerc, Red Bull, and the McLarens.
Yep.
So that was looking really, really good there. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I probably should have had someone else in there. So 334 points and used the Limitless chip there. Lawrence Van de Veer, 1980 McLaren 13 on 287. Max and Cheese from Jolie and Dyer, 267. Tails I Win, Andrew Taylor, 260 points. N-Team A, Nicola Taylor, 244. Fariz Hafizi, Petronas RT, 243. Robert Santos, Let Andretti in F1, 237. David Rojas, all Gasly, no brakes, 234. Dean Holt, our leader, our clubhouse leader at the moment, Ricky Bobby Racing, 230. And Justin Watts rounding out the top 10.
What's he?
With all signs of 227 points. We haven't mentioned Jay's fantasy for a long time. But he had Max, Dan, Hulk, K-Mag, Ocon, Red Bull, and the Haas as a constructor. I think he'll be the only one with Haas as a constructor, and it's not a silly call either. So 20 points there. So he rounds out the top 10 for the race weekend. Right, let's go to our weekends.
I'd rather not.
I scored a pretty respectable, actually, because I was in a little bit of trouble at race day because I had Joe and I had Dan. Yikes. So 2 retirements. How did Joe retire as well? Like, I have watched the opening 15 laps and I cannot find the point where he retired. He just appears at the bottom of the list. Out.
Yeah, he drove in, but
he comes in, and then he exits back onto the track, and then moments later he's out. Mystery. Anyway, so that hurt. But however,
so hang on. So how many did you lose for Joe?
Well, I lost 17 for Joe.
Wow.
And I lost 19 for Dan.
Wow.
Because I brought Dan back in because I was unhappy with Lance because he hadn't quite got the package up, and Dan was looking good, so I took him out. However, I'm okay with that because everyone hurt across the race weekends. 217 points for me. I had Perez. I made the call. I swapped Clerk for Perez.
Yep.
66 points on the double. Hulkenberg 10. Sonoda 10. Lost, there's nearly 40 points there lost between Dan and Joe. Thank God I took Alex out. And then I also had Red Bull for 108 and Ferrari for 59. But I did have Hulk and I had Alex.
108 for Red Bull.
Yeah, 108 for Red Bull. Massive weekend for the Bulls.
Jeepers.
So, Dan, Alex. I had Alex in there. So thank God I took Hulk out because that would have been a disaster. I would have had the 3 DNFs in there. So anyway, so that's my race weekend. How did you go with yours?
No, rubbish.
No, absolute rubbish. Makes me happy. I love looking at fantasy straight after a race. 150 points.
Yeah.
You had Sainz 28, Leclerc 62, Sonoda 10, Fernando 14, Dan minus 19, Ferrari 59, and you stuck fat with the RBs. But because Dan was out, your RBs got hit -4.
Got hit massively.
So you've sucked it up big time this weekend, 150 points.
Yep.
Let's look at the top, how many? 5? Let's go to the top 5. Let's go to the top 5 for the round so far. Danielson Musila has taken the lead bring back Kyalami GP, 932 points. We're about to back into the thousands.
4 points ahead.
4 points ahead of Dean Holt, Ricky Bobby Racing on 928. Andrew Taylor, Tails I Win on 916. That's close. Like, that's a DNF between the top three. That's one. That's all it is. Coming in fourth is Chris Holt on Minardi Cash App RB on 886. And it is my good self just working my way up the field. Fifth place, 857. Hot on my heels is Fariz Hafizi on 849.
You have been practicing
points.
these names.
I have been practicing names. I told you that. And I'll just scroll down because people want to know where you are. You're in 15th.
I'm okay with that.
I wouldn't be.
I'm always okay with the top 20.
Because last week you had a great week and you were you were right on me. And I was like, oh, goodness me. But this is what people want in fantasy. They want to see me doing well. And they want to see you just tumbling down the order.
Is that right?
Like you are. That's what people want to see.
I'm not even sure. Did I even go down?
You did. You actually went down. Yeah, you went backwards.
I know how far up I was.
Well, doesn't matter because you're 10 places behind me. Anyway, thanks to Chris. That's fantasy for the weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks to Chris at Dr. Auto Art. Head over there, as we said, social media, Facebook, Instagram, RedBull. Subscribe to his email for amazing discounts on your artwork.
I'm thinking Miami. We get him in for after Miami.
Oh, okay, yes.
I've been a bit reluctant for these time zone races.
We did say we were going to get Chris on, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Miami might be a good one.
Good, I like that.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, Chris. Let's go news.
All right, let's go news. Let's go a little bit of F2 into IndyCar-related news. Prema are officially entering IndyCar as of 2025.
They've been so interested to get into other forms of racing,
yeah, so I don't mind that. So it's like your little Ferrari link in. So that sort of dropped in the last hour or so.
Yep.
And that's looking interesting too.
Other news is Active Aero, which is 2026 thinking. So Active Aero was a way that they were thinking they're going to need to go with the new engines that they're looking at going with, which they're looking at 50-50 combustion and electrical energy, or stored energy. And so what they're going to need to do is, because that means that they've got these huge, big engine units at this stage.
Yep.
And so they're thinking about how they're going to get these cars to go around the track. Things are getting a little bit trickier for them. So Active Aero, which means that the wings are going to be moving. And to start with, they're hoping that they were going to work on just rear wings is going to open right up when the driver wants it to open right up.
Yep.
3 times as more force, less force, or 3 times more beneficial than what DRS is currently if they were to open up this active wing. And so some teams have been doing some modelling around some of this, and they've actually found that the cars are going to be undrivable because if you're changing that aero package so dramatically, even if you're driving down a straight, if you're going to be opening or closing those wings, the change is going to be so significant that you're actually going to be losing control fairly easily. Even some slight corners are going to be really tricky with these conditions. So now where they're going with Active Aero is they're thinking they're going to have front wings change as well, so that the whole package changes that aero equally. Because the problem was if just the back end changes, then all of a sudden the back end becomes a real problem.
Yep.
So they're going down the path of now investigating whether front wings will open up with the back wings. It's an interesting one. I don't know if we've discussed Active Aero. How do you sit with it? Do you like it?
I don't mind it. It's a pretty unique innovation.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
We've had it in past.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know.
It's a pretty cool idea. It sort of feels like that's sort of a really high-tech thing. We see a little bit of it in cars.
Yep.
But cars don't necessarily need the aero to be so high-tech because obviously they're not searching for that grip. However, with some changes in the automotive industry, they may start needing to do that as cars try and become lighter. Yep. They might try and do that. However, who knows? So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. Lots of calls for people. They just want to go back to combustion engines. Yep. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. So we're going to end up with
sound brilliant though.
With the beautiful,
brilliant.
So the concern is that we're going to end up with these really ugly cars because of these big engines, or big power units, sorry, we shouldn't call them engines, these big power units, when they're going 50-50 combustion, 50-50 stored electrical energy, it's going to really require quite a lot of space, and so they're a bit concerned about the look. They're a bit concerned about how they're going to behave, characteristics of Formula One, so they're coming up with all these different ways of making them still behave and look and go as quick as what they're going at the moment. Any other news?
Other news is that we've had a tyre test that has wrapped up at Suzuka.
Yep.
From Valtteri and Dan.
Yep.
Both drivers covering 239 laps together in wet and dry conditions.
That would have been nice for Dan to get out on track.
A little bit of time on track too. And a lot of criticism of drivers and the sprint weekend ahead in China. So it's been 5 years since we have been at China. It's also coincidentally been 5 years since anything has run in Shanghai.
Oh, at the track.
The track itself has not been used.
Oh, wow.
So drivers are concerned at the moment and have started to voice their opinions that because of the lack of running, and there has alleged to be some resurfacing that's happened too, with the sprint weekend and only getting one practice session, if we have an issue like a drain cover come loose, then it's actually going to cause more grief to the race weekend. I mean, it's going to throw up quite a lottery. But drivers, race engineers, data collectors, things like that, Pirelli in particular, they're not going to get the data and the things that they need to do proper car sets. So a little bit of concern at the moment. So there looks to be possibly an extra couple of checks that are going to happen prior to the race weekend and also pre-practice session to make sure that everything is up to scratch and up to standard.
I mean, like you say, we haven't seen these ground effect cars at China. And even the way that they've changed in the last couple of years from the first year of ground effects, we're seeing issues come up. So it's a good point. Yep. Something that they definitely need to be across.
Science is quoted in saying he'd heard there'd been resurfacing going on, so it could possibly be Istanbul 2.0, but hopefully not. Which we know was the race weekend where Kimi just.
It was a slippery
weekend across there. So maybe not. We don't want things like that. We don't want. We want a little bit of uncertainty, but we don't want undrivable conditions. Anyway, and I tell you what, if we have a drain cover come loose, tell you what, we'll tee off, weld them down now, literally right now. Someone needs to be in Shanghai welding drain covers down. I'm not a huge fan of Shanghai as an actual race to watch.
I love it.
I am unreal at it on PlayStation.
That's because there's lots of straight driving.
Unreal. Unreal.
I love that last corner coming across the line.
I don't think I've beaten on it, to be quite honest. I'm just going to put myself right up there. Especially the corkscrew into turn 1 and 2.
It is. I love it. I reckon it's a great track. I've enjoyed watching it.
Well, we've been there for 5 years.
Very fond memories of Ricciardo pulling that win off. Predictions?
Predictions is a Max win. It's going to be a Haas double points.
I like it.
And it's going to be, you know what? It's going to be Max, it's going to be Checo, it's going to be Sainz for the podium. And then it's going to be a Haas double points.
Well, after that.
Sorry.
Okay. I was like, whoa, that really shot up.
4th and 5th.
Holy moly.
9th and 10th.
Okay, yep. That's your other part of your prediction, right? Okay.
I'll tell you what, and you know what else I'm going to throw as a prediction? We're going to have a Williams in the wall.
Oh, what?
Yep.
You'd never read about it.
Yeah,
I'm Max into the 2 Ferraris.
Yep.
Sainz is all over it. So I was impressed with Leclerc, but he had sort of a different job to do. But I'll go Max, Sainz, Leclerc.
Big weekend for Zhou. At home. Has had some issues. DNF'd last week.
It'd be nice if they've got some fixes on their pit stops, wouldn't it, by then?
Needs something. Just needs to do what Yuki did for his fans in China.
Yep.
Big weekend for Zhou.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I'm not expecting big things out of the McLarens. So, but hey, we can hope that they've come up with a bit of a plan around that, and maybe they can become a little bit more competitive. But we'll wait and see. Until then, have a listen out for Fan Frenzy. That'll be on its way. Great questions at Fan Frenzy.
Awesome questions.
Well, that'll be on its way as well later in the week. But until then, we'll talk to you after China. Goodbye now.